Mr. Shunmakam's right, as well as colleagues from the Independent Power Procurement Office, represented by Ms. Lina Magondo and Ms. Lelina Swartz. Without further ado, colleagues, I wish to invite the Minister to the podium to address the media briefing, after which we will take questions from members of the media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, TK, and good morning to the colleagues from Eskom, the interim CEO of the NTCSA, Mr. Kgosientsho, and also our colleagues from the Independent Power Producer, the program, the IPP office. And also let me extend my warm and sincere greetings to members of the media, and just to convey our sincere appreciation at your availability, always making time to join us during this media briefing, so that we can use you as a conduit to communicate with the rest of the country, the households, and also business at large. So I really also want to take the opportunity to greet the viewers back at home. So today I stand before you to present the update in relation to our Independent Power Producer Procurement Program. And in fact, this media briefing signals a significant moment, because now we're pivoting away from just focusing on the performance of the grid that is largely Eskom, but also to ensure that we're able to update the country in relation to other programs, initiatives that are underway, to ensure that we are able to build, if you like, conditions of energy sovereignty. We are able to ensure that we attain an optimal mix in relation to the fuel sources that power the South African economy, but also try to illustrate to the country that we are doing everything possible to ensure that we are able to exploit the reforms on the generation side as birthed by the amendment in relation to the Electricity Regulation Act, and also to illustrate that we are doing everything possible to ensure that we are able to achieve our nationally determined contributions, in short, the NDC. These are a set of voluntary targets that the country has set itself to ensure that we are able to transition, we are able to green the South African economy, the generation capacity in the country, that we are able to make our contribution in relation to the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's important that the country is able to keep to its promise. We have made this before the global community, the international community. I think it's important that we continue to give that assurance, not just to the international community, but most importantly to the South African citizens, that we do have an appreciation that the issues of climate change and its relationship to greenhouse gas emission is something that has been established by a rich body of science. So the scientific community has made that connection, the correlation of greenhouse gas emissions and also climate change. And we also know that it's devastating large parts of the country. KZN is exposed to extreme weather occurrences. We have seen this in parts of the Western Cape. We have seen this in parts of the Northwest, and in fact across the length and breadth of the country. So it is our collective responsibility to ensure that we are able to transition and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And for us to be able to achieve this, we need to accelerate the onboarding of renewables as part of the aggregate mix. So today we are going to share with you, if you like, that bold program to ensure that we are able to achieve the targets that we have set for ourselves. But I thought that perhaps as a starting point, just to say that Eskom continues to register the kind of performance that is going to help the country's economy to recover. I make the point that we are going to move away now from celebrating consecutive days of load shedding. Of course, there was a reason why we were able to, we're emphasizing this performance. We're able to give this account because we We just came from a year 2023 where we have seen the highest intensity of load shedding and also the highest number of days of load shedding. So it was important that we were able to give assurance to the country that the Energy Action Plan is in full motion, and in fact is giving us the kind of results that are desired. We want to get to a point where we don't even count the number of days without load shedding, because the expectation is that there shouldn't be load shedding. There must be consistency of supply. But the reason why we've been giving this account was to illustrate that the measures that we've been taking over a period of time, as codified in the Energy Action Plan, are yielding the kind of results that are required. And that's why when I started here, I said we're pivoting. It's not about the number of days without load shedding, but it's what are the additional interventions we are making to ensure that load shedding won't come back, and also ensure that we are able to attain energy security as we green electricity generation in the country. And of course, I mean, some of the important features of this recovery plan shows that the UCLF has been able to improve from what was 33.79%, and now we're sitting at 25.5%. So if you like, an 8 percentage point decrease rather, in the UCLF, your unplanned capacity loss factor. It's a very, very important measure of the health of the system. The lower it is an indication that the system is getting healthier and healthier. And if you look at what was the UCLF recorded over the past 7 days, you see that we've been averaging at about 10,500 megawatts. So essentially we're saying 10,500 megawatts of capacity that is installed was not available on account of various reasons, units failing and units not performing at their optimal capacity. And if you had to compare this with the same period last year, it's an improvement of about 5,000 megawatts. So that's significant from where we have started, and that's why we've been able to keep the lights on for a considerable period of time. And also what is important here is to juxtapose this performance against the summer outlook of Eskom. So we have a baseline of about, I think it's about 13,000 megawatts or so. If we achieve 13,000 megawatts, the optimistic case, 13,000 megawatts of UCLF, then it means that we won't have load shedding. What we are seeing now is even a 3,000 megawatts improvement on our own outlook, and it's thanks to the work that Eric, led by Beki Nxumalo, are doing at Eskom. So it's important that we are able to consistently improve this kind of results. Of course, in numbers terms, it means that there's less and less reliance on diesel to power our electricity requirements. And in rand value terms, I mean, you can see that compared to the same period last year, same period starting 1st of April to the 17th of October, we had spent about 18 billion rands of diesel just to keep the lights on. So if you had to compare it with the period this year, 2024, 1st of April to 17th of October 2024, that number is about 12 billion less than what we had attained last year. So it's a significant shift. And in fact, we are sustaining it 66% below what was the same period last year. So if you like, there's a structural shift. What do I mean by structural shift? Is that there's less and less reliance on diesel. And if you look at the load factor, the percentage of time that we're relying on diesel, the same period last year, we're sitting at about 8.95%, and this year we are sitting at about 4.59%. And of course, this improvement in the health of Eskom is going to be passed on to the end consumer. Remember that when you determine the tariff structure is also a function of your fuel sources. So if there's less and less reliance on diesel, it means that Eskom will make, if you like, lesser tariff applications to NERSA, because they're becoming more and more efficient. And in fact, the expectation of the regulator and the legislation is that the Eskom must be an efficient generator. So we're getting to that stage. We're taking small steps, but significant in the context of where we're coming from. So I thought it's important that we're able to do that reality check. But the big message I want to convey to the country is that it's an anomaly for us to celebrate the fact that there's 208 days of no load shedding. That should be, the standard is that there shouldn't be any load shedding. And in fact, the standard should further suggest that you should not rely on expensive fuel sources for you to keep the lights on. So I thought it's important that I make that point, so we do have that appreciation that really this is not an achievement. It's a step in the right direction. An achievement will be when there's absolutely no load shedding, and in fact we're able to use cheaper forms of electricity generation for us to keep the lights on. And that's where the Independent Power Producer Program comes in. You know that it was introduced in August of 2011. So this is a disciplined way of government going out into the public through a transparent and competitive bidding process to procure cleaner forms of electricity generation. So the first generation of these bid windows were focusing on PV and wind. Like I said, now we have had a cycle of 9 bid windows since the inception of the program in August of 2011. Trailblazing, transformational development with the office that we think that the opportunities are vast going into the future. And with the introduction of the NTCSA, better alignment on this procurement of renewable or cleaner forms of energy generation, supporting and following the transmission development plan is going to help us to accelerate the onboarding of renewable energy generation capacity. I've made the point that the 7th administration, the Energy and Electricity Department, is going to accelerate this procurement program. And in fact, we want to be aggressive, and I'll show you some of the interventions, having engaged with the developers, the financiers, the stakeholders in this ecosystem, some of the proposals that have come through, and they are receiving our urgent attention on how best to improve this procurement program so that we're able to realize our ambitions. And of that 9 bid windows, we have had 141 preferred bidders appointed, and the total of these preferred bidders is about 13,422 megawatts. So that's significant. It doesn't necessarily follow that the entire 13,422 megawatts is operational, and in fact, of that 13,422 megawatts, about 7,335 megawatts are operational, coming from 95 projects of those 141 projects. And of course, it includes our peakers that burn diesel, Avon and Didiza are part of the first generation of, if you like, the IPPs that we're able to procure. And then what is under construction is about 1,897 megawatts, and this comes from 17 projects. And we also know that there's 1,183 megawatts from 9 projects that are preparing to reach commercial and financial close. But for me, what is telling about the prospects and the opportunities that lies ahead is that there's 8,231 megawatts capacity currently in the market to be evaluated between now and next year. So that's significant. So you can see that there's a ramp up of this program, but from where I'm standing, I don't think that it is enough. I think that we should be multiplying this. What that multiplication is a conversation we're having with the IPP office, having with all the players in the ecosystem. So one of the things that we have achieved in the first few days of the 7th administration was our ability to exploit our convening power and call everyone in this space into one room so that we can critique, if you like, the 9 bid windows and see how best each and everyone can contribute towards a very efficient and seamless procurement of a renewable energy program. And I'll highlight some of the interventions that are under consideration. I'm confident that in the next 4 to 5 weeks we'll come out to the market with a degree of certainty on those reforms that we're introducing, the improvements that we're making to ensure that we're able to accelerate this program. This program is important because we have said to the rest of the world that we see ourselves contributing a reduction of anything between 350 to 420 million tons of CO2 equivalent per annum going into the future as part of our ambition to decarbonize, the commitments we have made at the COP as part of our nationally determined contribution. So it's important that we must accelerate this, and we are going to de-risk energy generation just from a monopoly that is Eskom, and then we're able to have multiple generators of electricity in the country. So we've seen what are the downside of a monopoly. So when a monopoly fails, it drags the entire country with it. So we've seen the challenges. Eskom overexposed as a country. Eskom significant generation capacity, 100%. Of course, it has come down about 90% of total generation coming from Eskom. If Eskom fails, then it means that the electricity generation fails. So it's important that we are able to reform, introduce other players, and we are able to de-risk, and that's the direction that we are taking. I really want to commend the team at the IPP office led by Mr. Bernard Magoro and his exceptionally competent team. One of the things that the team have done, especially looking at the first 3 bid windows, was to say that there's an opportunity to refinance this project, because if you look at the bid windows, already they are 6 years into operation, 7 years into operation. A lot of them, of those first generation of projects, have already paid their debts. So there's an opportunity for us to negotiate a refinancing instrument. I want to congratulate the team that as a result of that innovative approach, we've been able to see that the refinancing has been able to give us savings of about 5.1 billion rands. And of course, part of that gets to be passed on to the end consumer over a period of time. Of course, half of that sits with the project developers and half of it IPP, and by extension, if you like, the consumer. So that's the kind of innovative work that the team has done over a period of time, so that we're able to first green the South African economy, make sure that the electricity is affordable. And it's those little steps that the team has been able to master that over a period of time is going to give us the kind of results that we want to achieve. Remember that one of the big areas of conversation, big areas of attention, the focal point of the ministry is to ensure that we are able to reduce the cost of electricity in the country, make businesses competitive, and ensure that we cushion the household. What do we know in rand value terms in relation to the health of this program? The first thing I want to convey is that there's a significant market confidence even outside the borders of the country. So from all over the globe, there have been significant players who have come and bidded into this program. They have participated in this program. We have seen companies coming from Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Spain, Turkey, and Denmark that have also participated. We have seen companies coming from Saudi Arabia, Japan, Korea, have also participated. So I think it's important that we've got just a general appreciation of the confidence that the market has, and the market, not just the domestic market, but the international market, on the credibility of the program that is run by the IPP office. And I really want to congratulate the team of men and women, exceptionally talented engineers, accountants, and lawyers. They've been able to be very clinical, transparent in the manner in which we've been able to run this program, and that's why there's increased market confidence. And of course, out of this, we have seen investments of about 272 billion rand. But something that is understated in this is that only 18% of that 272 billion rand comes from outside, from those countries that I've mentioned. And in fact, 82% of these investments come from the South African commercial banks, comes from our own DFIs in the form of the IDC and the DBSA. So that's talking to, if you like, the robustness and the resilience of the South African finance community. So I think this is important, that the first people to show confidence in the program, even before there's international interest, is our own domestic markets. And these domestic markets have come and they've been able to, if you like, invest in these programs. And for me, that's one of the biggest highlights. So I think it's important that when you do this balance sheet of what has been the success of this program, the focus is not just on the megawatts. Of course, the megawatts are important for obvious reasons. We want the lights on, we want the economy to grow. But what has been the opportunity that has been created for domestic capital to be able to invest in this program. And this is something for me that is commendable. Of course, I made the point that there's about 8,250 megawatts of these projects that are either in operation or in construction. I think one of the things that are telling about these statistics, I mean, we're doing a geographic mapping of where these projects are. The first one is that it's something we've been stating over a period of time. I think there's been oversubscription in your Cape provinces, the Northern Cape, Western Cape, and Eastern Cape, because that's where you find your optimal renewable energy sources. Your irradiation levels, Northern Cape, exceptionally better than any other place in the country. The wind speeds, the efficiency there, your Cape provinces, exceptionally better than any part of the country. And you can see there's been a concentration of investments in those areas. So the density of these projects sits in there. But we know that we've got other capacity in other parts of the country. And you can see that KZN outside the Pika, which really uses diesel, there hasn't been any renewable energy program in that country, in that part of the country, that province. So it's important that there has to be alignment of where the capacity is and the resource to ensure that we are able to accelerate this procurement program. But essentially what we are trying to illustrate is that almost every province has benefited, but I've made the point that the concentration of these benefits really is in the Cape provinces. And it's something that working with the NTCSA, working with the markets, the developers, the financiers, we are able to suggest that there's a way that we can direct and manage this program going forward as we're looking for the NTCSA to build the kind of capacity that is necessary to allow us to further exploit these resources. What is the point here is that these are geographically spread, of course, with the concentration in the Cape provinces. And then we have taken a major step forward. What is that major step forward? Remember that those bid windows that have been accounting for the 8,000 plus megawatts, so it's wind and solar. What we have done, and of course a bit of Pika there. What we have done now, we are going into the next generation of battery energy storage independent power producer program. This is important because it's going to help us to fully exploit the benefits of these renewables. We know during the day we've got the excess capacity. We can use that excess capacity to power the batteries. So essentially the batteries are storage, and then during the peak when we don't have wind, when we don't have sun, we draw from that stored capacity. And in that way, so it's able to flatten the profile of generation and availability, in that we are using technology to store this excess generation capacity. So bid window 1 projects have reached a commercial close. Bid window 1, of course, some of them are working towards a commercial close. Bid window 2, bids are already in evaluation phase. And what the team is doing is that they are doing the evaluation of these bids for battery, and they are also doing for the last bid window. So it just shows the capacity and the dynamic nature of the team, that over a period of time the team has been a bit more dynamic, a bit more agile in how we're able to evaluate these bids, and we're becoming more and more efficient, and thanks to the work that Mr. Magora is doing there with the team. And of course we identified the spine areas where there's no capacity, so essentially if you like, grid capacity. So we are expanding, if you like, the renewable energy capacity in those areas. So you can see parts of the Northwest, the Free State, and the Cape provinces. So there's a science that underpins the work that the team is doing to ensure that as we grapple with the issues around the transmission development plan, there's things that we can do immediately. And battery storage offers a significant opportunity. And we expect the total of these bid windows is about 1,744. These are gradual steps, but I'm sure that we continue to perfect, get it right, and I'm sure we can go large scale so that we're able to benefit from this natural endowment. So storage is an important part of the conversation of the story for us to be able to ensure that it approximates base load conditions. And then an important feature of what we have observed over a period of time. So now we can do a longitudinal study, starting from 2011 bid window number 1, and then do an assessment 13 years later. What has been the improvement in the technology, and then that resulting in the price point. So we have seen that when we started with regards to solar, a kilowatt hour, it was coming in at about 4.66 rand. And today, as I speak to you, is coming in at about 56 cent kilowatt hour. So that's a decrease of about 88% over that period of time. And on the wind, what has been the price? We have seen that the first generation bid window 1 was coming in at about 1.93 cent kilowatt hour. Today, as I stand before you, it's coming in at about 58 cent kilowatt hour. So on the aggregate, if you pull them together, we have seen a price decrease of about 85%. So we're coming in at about 56 cent kilowatt hour. This is important. This is important outside the issues around greening, if you like, electricity generation. Is going to translate into cheaper electricity over a period of time. So that's the point I'm making. So I think it's important that the story about the price point, the story about the effectiveness, the efficiency of these technologies is illustrated in this. Just our own experiences in South Africa before we draw from other international experiences. And of course, couple this with battery storage, I think we can get, if you like, maximum value out of this. Of course, as I make this point, I do acknowledge the technical limitation, the non-dispatchable nature of this technology, the fact that it's intermittent, but we have been able to illustrate as a country that it can be done. A transparent, competitive process. The prices have been coming down. Now we're introducing battery. We're de-risking any electricity generation away from Eskom and finding new sources of electricity generation. And hopefully over a period of time, we'll see that benefit trickling to the end consumer. The socio-economic impacts of these programs are important. So the point I'm making is that we're not going to decouple the conversation about the need for us to accumulate and acquire the megawatts necessary for us to power the South African economy and ensure that we are able to attain, if you like, energy security. But it's important that you are able to incorporate in this conversation, in this program, other elements that are able to ensure that we are able to achieve the transformational if you like, ability or capability of this program. What are some of those significant features? 85,800 job opportunities created for South African citizens over a period of time. Of course, the peak of those job opportunities is during construction. I'm the first one to admit that once they're in operation, of course, the number of jobs, they come down, and they come down significantly. But you can't take away the fact that over that period, and especially the peak, we've been able to employ about 85,000 plus people. And of course, I made the point about the CO2 equivalent. We've got an ambition of greening the South African economy, have got an appreciation of our obligations as a country, contributing about a third of the emissions on the continent or in sub-Saharan Africa. So we've got a disproportionate amount of responsibility to ensure that we were able to contribute to the reduction. So the million tons offset of about 114.8 million tons that have been achieved since the inception of this program. And then the shareholding. So the money that resides with South Africans of this total investment is sitting at about 37.7% of black South Africans. So it's important, and that's why I refer to the transformational aspects of this program, so that you are able to deracialize participation here. And thanks to our commercial banks, the DFI, they've sat behind these black shareholders, put their faith in them, and we are beginning to see the kind of results that are desired. And then something that is more impactful is communities. This land belongs to communities, so they must have equity in these programs. And of course, over time, we can continue to improve this aspect, but what we have achieved is there's 9% shareholding by local communities. And of course, the spend on the local content is about 76.6 billion rands, and of course the contribution of the socioeconomic aspects to this work is about 3.8 billion rands, and then significant savings to water. If you were to compute, if we were to generate this outside using other technologies, would have spent about 135.7 million kiloliters of water if we had not gone through this program but relied on other technology sources. So this is the amount of contribution and development that we have seen over time, and the BEE spend is about 105 billion rand. So that's significant. The point we want to show to the country is that we are alive to the socio-economic impact as we continue to accelerate this program to give us the kind of results that are required. So those results are measured using multiple matrices, not just the megawatts, but what are the socio-economic impact, the participation of the local markets in this program. I've made the point, 82% of that 276 is, if you like, rand-based. So that's the kind of investments that have been made over time. So as I conclude, we think that there can be improvements, and this is a part of the conversations that we have had with the players in the space. We hosted a seminar where we brought the financiers, the project sponsors, the chaps who are sitting with the technology, the know-how, the engineers, the IPP office, the NTCSA, everyone in the public sector ecosystem to say, let's have this conversation. So there shouldn't be a separate discussion by the developers on the one hand, and then you have the financiers. Let's come into one room, because the success of this program is predicated on a seamless working relationship of the interest of the various players in that ecosystem. So I think it's important that we are able to address that. What are some of the issues that will come out now in the next few weeks to announce how best we are going to deal with them? And some of them are apparent, these things that we have known. So the first one is that working with Eskom, we will find ways to reduce your CELs and also your budget code timelines. So what we have seen is that the timeline that it takes for you to be able to obtain this is it's inordinate. So it undermines the bankability, the credibility, the efficiency of this program. So it's important that we are able to address this question. And this sits with us, if you like, SOE, Eskom, is in the stable of the private sector, so public sector rather. So it's in our interest that we should be able to truncate those processes. And in so doing, we are able to ensure that the projects reach financial close much quicker. And we know also that there's over 10 gigawatts of determined RE capacity, renewable energy capacity, that is currently available for reallocation in new bid windows. So we know that almost sterile, so we can reallocate this in the the new bid window. So in this way, you are able to ensure that before you talk even the next rounds, there's a 10 gigawatts that is sitting there. Of course, it's a function of the conversations with the NTCSA without necessarily putting them, if you like, in the limelight. One of the issues that requires attention is for them to look at this and how best they can contribute towards ensuring that we're able to free this gigawatts so that the economy can benefit from that. But it's a conversation we'll have with NTCSA. To the extent that this can be done, I'm sure that we'll be able to come out into the public and share with you how we're going to address this. And then there's an idea that we are entertaining to say that the next bid window should target projects that they already have secured the budget codes. So what we know is that there are delays, there are projects that are sitting with the budget codes, and of course they go through the same process as all other projects. But if you come to think of it, those who have an appreciation of how this procurement process works, is that your budget code is a critical milestone in you getting to commercial close. So we think that there's a way for us to nuance, if you like, this procurement process and ensure that those that have already secured budget codes, in fact, are the ones that are first online. Like I said, is that discussion we're having, but we're gravitating towards all of these things. The point I'm making is that there's an appreciation that there are things that you can do, even before you announce the next bid windows, that can be able to ensure that it restores or strengthens the confidence of the market in this program that we are running. And then the other point we are making is that there should be a geographic targeting of procurement rounds. So we know that there are corridors where the grid capacity is not there. I've made the point, KZN, outside the PICAS, there is no application in relation to renewables. So we know there are many parts of the country, especially inland and towards the north, where we've got grid capacity. So it might be possible that consistent with the transmission development plan that the CEO, NTCA, is working on, we are able to ensure that there's alignment. So there's alignment of the capacity and therefore direct the market in the right place. Because remember, the success of this program just strengthened the credibility. We have not been able to allocate close to 3,000 megawatts in the last bid window because of grid capacity. So people will not, the market will not have confidence in this program. So it's important that there's greater levels of alignment, the TDP that Mr. Skeepers is working on and the team, once they announce it, so that there's great deal of alignment. So we're not having separate conversations. So we have an appreciation that we are part of the ecosystem and we're able to identify where these opportunities are. And then there's a possibility of establishing a solar or wind parks. The Indians have gone this route, and I think the Saudis have gone this route. That it will work for us is something that the team is entertaining. What we call a solar park to ensure that we improve the state of readiness and success of this program, which could include programs that are combined with transmission strengthening and plans. So essentially, you carve out a huge hectares of land to say that here I'm going to do, if you like, a solar park. So generating gigawatts of energy. Of course, that should be aligned with a transmission development plan. So the point I'm making is that we're entertaining the multiple configurations on how we can improve this procurement going forward, so that that ambition of ensuring that they were able to accelerate renewable energy generation in the country gets to be realized. So it's drawn from a very deep and robust critique of the 9 bid windows. There are lessons to be learned and unlearned from there. We know there are things that we can do better internally. We're working on those. We have identified what those are. The NTCSA is an indispensable feature of that conversation. And then the market also have got its own obligations. And then there's an idea that we are entertaining of releasing separately RFPs for wind and PV. So we have seen in many instances that PVs will exhaust the grid capacity. Of course, this is also a function of curtailment. So these are the conversations we are having to say that for us to be able to better manage this competition, can we go out and just have a bid window just for wind? And then go out and just have a bid window for PV, so that we are able to manage the issues of grid access. And then we want to consider technology agnostic system requirements focused on bid windows. So we are not necessarily specific, so you can go out and say, this is the solution we want, without necessarily prescribing what the technology is. It's a conversation that we are having internally. We have learned from abroad that there are possibilities that presents as a result of what we call online auction models. And this, like I said, is drawn from international experience. These have been investigated, which are likely or will likely reduce the cost and timelines of bid evaluations. So it's important. There's a lot of investments that players invest in preparing these documents, putting together bids, and we think from the preliminary work that the team has done in relation to online auction, it's got the possibility of reducing, if you like, both the cost and time in relation to bid evaluation. And then we're looking at developing a credit see-through for IPP program and work with the DTIC. So if we have a see-through of what the pipeline looks like, I think the DTIC can design an instrument that can help us, of course, with the kind of legislation and policy instruments for us to be able to localize, if you like, the content of some of these components that goes into these programs. Of course, I did say that we have achieved some degree of localization. We think that we can do better. The only problem with the current process is a stop-start approach. So there's no way that you are able to build with some degree of confidence, if you like, elevated requirements for local content, because you don't know. You can't build industry on the basis of uncertainty. Capacity utilization will decline. Investments will be lost as a result of that. But if there's a see-through of how long the process will take, I think that industry will respond. And of course, the necessary policy instruments to make the possible for local content. Some of it might come at a premium with regards to the price point. But if you come to think of it, it's a premium that any country should be prepared to pay, because that premium, if you like, subsidizes job creation, subsidizes skills, subsidizes our ability to broaden the industrial flow, and also the national fiscus is able to benefit out of this. So that's a comprehensive set of consideration that will receive attention as part of these interventions that we are making. And then we make the point that there's a need for us to constantly communicate with the market in order to mobilize potential bidders to start the required process with regards to the BQ and the like. So one of the things that we have seen is our inability to communicate with the market. And I think that this pressure helps us to say to the market that this is the direction we are taking, these are some of the considerations we are making. We'll come back and articulate in the most absolute fashion what are these interventions that we are going to put in place to ensure that there's greater levels of efficiency, there's greater confidence in the program. We are able to onboard as quick as possible, and we are able to de-risk away from Eskom and achieve the conditions of energy security. So that's the direction that we are taking. So if you were to ask me, what is the, if you like, the overall performance of this program, I think is good. We want to take it to a point where it's excellent. And the team has done that, like I said, trailblazing, first generation of this kind of program on the continent, and the team has consistently tried to improve and perfect it. There's a point beyond which it requires executive authority, it requires greater levels of coordination and alignment. And we have started those conversations. We are not talking as separate players, but we see ourselves as one, but playing different roles within that ecosystem. And that's why that conversation with the market players, the developers, the financiers, stakeholders has been able to help us to fashion a set of possible interventions to help us to ensure that we accelerate this program, and in fact we are able to improve on its benefits, both transformational and developmental. And we have seen from the 9 bid windows that there's a huge amount of potential out of this program. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for such detailed insights into our energy complex and the endeavors towards South Africa's inclusive and sustainable energy security and sovereignty. So colleagues, we'll now take questions from members of the media. The Minister and the panel are here and are very happy to provide responses and clarity where it's sought. As indicated earlier, we do have the IPP office as well as colleagues from Eskom and the NTCSA. So colleagues, by a show of hands, please introduce yourself and the media house that you represent. So we'll take the the first hand, and then Katleho, you'll be the second. Antoinette's first.
Antoinette Sawat, I'm a freelance journalist. Minister, you refer to 10 gigawatt determined renewable capacity available for reallocation. If you could just clarify, referring to the 23 wind projects that were not allocated in bid window 6, or which projects are those? And then you also said there might be a premium on the localization on components and supplier things that are supplied locally. I just want to know whether you see that premium being passed on to the consumer through the electricity tariff, like in bid window 1, 2, and 3, or is that something that can be funded separately by government, for example, as they subsidize the auto industry? Thank you.
Thank you, Antoinette. Katleho.
Good morning. My name is Kgosientsho Ramokgopa from the SABC. I just wanted clarity on the presentation by the Minister. So is this presentation on what is currently happening since the inception of the bid window program since 2011 to where we are now? 9 bid windows, 95 projects, 272.5 billion rand in investments, about 85,830 of these jobs created. Is this where we are right now? And these jobs, do they come through projects that have already started since the introduction? Are they from the 95 projects that we've seen being spoken about now? I just wanted clarity on whether this information that we're getting now is from since we started to where we are right now, looking at some of the socioeconomic impact.
Thank you, Katleho. Do we have any other hands in the room? Before we go to Itumeleng, who will take us through the questions shared online. Itumeleng.
Good morning. I'll be taking questions from online. The first question is from William Horn from Network 24. How much have challenges with tertiary grid capacity, which shift the regions where most IPPs can build, affected the amount of tender applications under the IPP program? Are potential IPPs as interested with moving to other regions than the popular Western, Eastern, and the Northern Cape? What are the current and continuing challenges preventing so many of the selected preferred bidders in previous bid window from reaching financial and commercial close? And the last question from William is there any mechanism or a new one being considered to cancel contracts with significantly delayed posts? And the other question is from Kgosientsho from IPP Business Intelligence. Will the IPP office be pulling the big bonds of buyers that did not achieve financial close after several years in the REIPP bid window 5, for example, Mainstream, and the RMIPP, for example, K Power Sheep? I'll say.
Are those all the questions?
No.
Do we have a lot more?
Yes.
Maybe we can take a few more.
The other question is from Terence Creamer, Engineering News. During the recent meeting with the renewable industry, a preference was shown for smaller, more frequent bid window rather than mega bidding rounds. What approach does the Minister prefer? Eskom grid application and connection processes have been identified as problem for both public and private procurement. What is being done to improve these processes? And the third question from Terence is to navigate the grid constraints in the near term. Will spatially defined bidding rounds be considered to direct IPPs toward areas with ample grid? And the last question from Terence is, given the importance of the curtailment framework for unlocking grid capacity immediately, when will that framework be in place?
Thank you. Is that all the questions?
for now.
Okay, thank you, Itumeleng. Lelani or Lina, are you prepared to respond to some of the questions on the IPPs, and then we'll go to Mr. Skierpes on the challenges to grid access, and then the Minister will wrap up on the response for this first round. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. In no particular order, I will respond to the questions. The first one was around the balance of the megawatts. How do those arise? Just to give an overview, under bid window 6, we had 1,424 megawatts for bid window 5 that failed for various reasons. You mentioned the projects that did not achieve commercial close. Those projects, we currently concluded the closure process for that. I'll give a bit more information on that, as well as in relation to the risk mitigation or RIMPPP. We had 1,570 megawatts that were not allocated. The balance is what is available under the second and third determination for allocation, with 8,000 of that obviously being currently under procurement, as the Minister indicated, for the gas program, the two battery energy storage programs that are currently out in the market, as well as bid window 7. The rest is then available for future bid windows. In relation to the behavioral changes in the market around where do we see projects located, historically, projects and project developers have obviously preferred going to the Cape region, because that's where you had an abundance of resource. However, that does not mean that we haven't seen an appetite from the market. We've seen people move to other areas in the country. Minister mentioned the Free State. We've also seen projects now being located in KZN, Northwest, as well as Mpumalanga. But obviously that is dependent on the availability of grid capacity. So I think Mr. Skierpes will speak to what is being done from a grid capacity perspective, because we are also seeing that even in those areas we've got congestion or lack of grid capacity within specific substations. So there is work being done in that respect over and above the grid that is unlocked through the battery energy storage program. On the failed projects, the process that we've concluded is essentially we've gone through a process of getting representations from those bidders to enable us to then terminate. We have terminated all the preferred bidders that did not achieve commercial close under bid window 5. And with those, we are currently going through a process of calling the bid guarantees. Associated with that, unfortunately, we have had some court challenges from some of those preferred bidders, and we're now having to deal with that. Risk mitigation, we also did conclude that process, and those projects in line with the RFP did forfeit their preferred bidder fees. And from our perspective, we have concluded the process with those bidders for risk mitigation. On spatial bidding, we have considered the possibility of having geographical allocation for specific bidding rounds. But obviously, that will be guided by the level of competitiveness that we're able to achieve. And hence, we did commission a study that looked at that, and we looked at what are the possibilities there. And based on those results, and also just a sense of market interest and development of projects in those areas, that is something that we will consider. But obviously, we need to ensure that from a competitiveness, we'll still get the competitive bidding. On the issue of the curtailment framework, I think I'll give that to Mr. Skippers to respond to. However, suffice to say that that is also currently under consideration by NERSA. There was an approach to NERSA to have a curtailment framework approved, and the regulator did hold public hearings around that, and we anticipate to receive their decision shortly. Thank you.
Good morning. It's just a few responses to some of the questions that have been raised. I'll start with the last one that Lena spoke to as well regarding curtailment. Really nothing more to add. We made the submissions. NERSA is considering it. They've been through the public consultation processes, and the matter is now in their hands. Hopefully we'll get updates or an outcome very soon. And then secondly, with regard to the question around the market's interest in moving to other locations where we have great capacity, I think Lena has covered that well. The truth is yes, we have seen a response, a positive response to where we have great capacity. We have been publishing what we call the Generation Connection Capacity Assessment Report. The last version was for 2025. And the intention is exactly that, to indicate to the market where do we have how much capacity on the network to connect, and based on that information the market has responded, and there are increasing applications in those areas outside of the Greater Cape area. So I think the market is responding to the information and the signals around what is available where. And then with regard to the challenges that we experience, there's numerous. So if you talk upstream in terms of the preparation of projects, obviously one of the important things is to conduct the EIAs, and I think that process is working very efficiently. DFFE has streamlined its process, and I think that is working well. Obviously it's a statutory process, and sometimes you have complexities that arise that might necessitate specialized studies and so on, but the process works well, so we don't consider that to be a challenge. With regard to areas where you are needing to construct new lines, part of the challenge is obviously that you need to transit over hundreds of kilometers of private property very often, and the challenge could be reaching agreement with the landowner, particularly around compensation for the right to traverse their land. It can be a protracted process. We do have the instrument of expropriation with compensation at market value as an instrument that can be used, and that's something that we leverage where necessary. So servitude acquisition is certainly one of the issues, but in addition, broadly speaking, I think there's a matter of resource constraints in terms of construction capacity, in terms of having access to certain commodities like the large transformers. So we have taken steps to put in place framework agreements for the supply of these large transformers, but their lead times are universally long. They are 24 to 36 months to get a large transformer. So those framework agreements are in place, and we are employing them to secure the type of transformers that are required at the transmission level. Construction capacity, we have lots of engagements and collaboration with the various stakeholders and associations in the construction space, again to share with them the plans and to work with them to understand the requirements. Many contractors may not be accredited to build transmission lines, and we have a program to actually increase that capacity of contractors that can build these very large transmission lines. And then lastly, as a general principle, there's a number of programs that we have launched and are implementing to again bring more transmission capacity online, Besides the curtailment matter, we've got a program to add transmission or transformers at existing substation facilities, and that will help us to shorten the lead time to be able to connect. And there's a number of projects that are expedited that have been identified that will give us more capacity to connect new generation capacity in the shortest possible time. I trust I've covered most of the relevant questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those questions. I think the nature of the questions really do attest to the fact that we have made significant progress on the generation side. Since I was appointed, even the last administration, it's for the first time we call a briefing, and the generation people then get to be asked a question. Congratulations. So it means that you can stay in the office now. We are not interested in you anymore, Eric. But on a serious note, well done, Eric, to you and the team. I think this is a testimony to the kind of progress we have made, and I think it has opened up space for us to have more conversations about the enduring nature of energy generation in the country, as opposed to, if you like, an immediate crisis of load shedding. And it's thanks to the men and women of Eskom for the kind of progress that they've registered. Maybe just to Antoinette, on your question on the premium, so the intention now is not necessarily to say there must be pass-through of that cost to the end consumer, because what we're going to do, we're going to negate, if you like, the benefits that we have drawn out of going through and procuring cheaper form of electricity. We think that there are instruments, fiscal instruments that can be used to be able to carry that premium. And remember, I mean, if you think of it, I think of it differently. Can call it a premium. I'm calling it an investment into domestic industrial capability, ensuring that we get people into jobs, ensuring that we are able to address issues of poverty, and making sure that our industries become competitive over a period of time. And then there has to be a clinical manner in which you choose what are those components. There are other areas without necessarily mentioning them, but I do have a few suggestions, but without necessarily mentioning them. There are other areas of the value chain where we are unlikely going to beat the Chinese, even with our best efforts, because I think they are far advanced along the curve. Significant state support. They've developed, if you like, superior R&D, and of course their demographic just favors them. 1.5 billion people. The pipeline is huge, and they don't only service the Chinese market. They are the major players in that space. So we have to play, if you like, smart in that space. And that's a conversation, Antoinette, we're having with Minister Tau on what is best. And of course, Kgosientsho here and the team, because these are experts. And Kgosientsho makes the point about long lead times and all of that, whether we'll be able to build our own industrial capacity to undermine those long lead times, because it's also a cost. I mean, just waiting that long. And also in the context of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, if over a period of time we can build a sufficient capacity and capability to think of the market not just as being the South African domestic market, but the African market. Of course, even there you'll still be faced with the challenge of the Chinese lending at significantly competitive prices. So that's a conversation we're going to have. But the long and short now, we don't anticipate that it should be carried by the end consumer, Antoinette. Katlego, yes, you are right. What we are attempting to do was to give you a comprehensive account since 2011. Where are we at? Because we have never had a more elaborate discussion or presentation to the country. All people know bid window number 1, number 2, number 3, all of that. So we're trying to pull all of that together. And just to show everyone that the megawatts are there on the grid, and that there's been significant achievements from a socioeconomic impact point of view. Whether that is enough, my answer is no. I think we can do better. But it's a start. I think the team continues to make improvements in that area. And then, Chris, I know that Leah has answered the question. I make the point that contracts are entered for a reason. So these are legally binding documents. I mean, they are state guarantees that supports these bid windows. Now they are coming, those guarantees are at about 80%. Could they continue to come down? So if for one reason or the other Eskom is unable to purchase and pay, the state is liable. So in the same manner that we hold the state liable, of course, it's a part of the contingent liabilities, the developers are also liable. So there's a reason why we enter into a contract if you are unable to deliver and you can't substantiate why, and those reasons are not on our side, but as a result of your own shortcomings. We are going to pull the bid bonds. I was saying to the team, call the guarantees. If we get to land in court, let's land in court. But if legal documents are meant for exactly that, they are legally enforceable. You can't just punish the one hand and on the other you want to negotiate. No, it doesn't work that way. The credibility of this program is also a function of our ability to execute and implement what are contractual obligations. And I said to the team, this is one area where I experienced openly, and I'm sharing it again, a degree of impatience. Pull them. If they take us to court, we'll go to court, but pull them. There's a reason why we have a program, and we must stick to the rules of this program. We are the first ones where we have made mistakes, where we think that there's missteps. In some instances, we pull back some of the gazetting, we consider some of the actions that we are taking. But in this instance, if we are not in the wrong, we pull them. If they've got a case to make, the courts will adjudicate and then will respect. But pull them, because that's what sits there in the contract. And then, Terence, yes, you are correct. You are part of the conversations. One of the issues that came out there was the developer says, no, but Minister, don't just think of a mega bid window. We think that what can give credibility to this program is smaller but more frequent windows. And that's the point I made earlier on, Mr. Creamer, to say that it's a conversation we're having internally. And I think the colleagues there at the seminar, they made compelling arguments why you must go that route. And of course, internally, there are others who are making an argument why you must go the other route. We'll find each other. I think ultimately what industry and what government wants is certainty of this program. That they see through of the nature of the program, and that the state is committed to procure. So we'll consider all of that put together. And then on the question, Mr. Skeppers has answered the issues around curtailment. Just the bigger question, which came out of the conversation with the players, was the challenges, as they put it, in relation to NEXA. I didn't just pick up that issue there. When I went to the South African Wind Energy in Dava, I think they raised the same issue. When you see also the NECOM structures, the issues of feed-in tariff, you mentioned them. Some of the innovations that we want to introduce, the wheeling, they raised the issue that perhaps NERSA could be doing things quicker. I really want to give the assurance that we are working with the chair and the board and the CEO there to ensure that we work with NEXA. In all fairness, this is a rapidly evolving space, and of course, NEXA must condition itself to respond to this rapidly evolving space of the electricity generation, the energy complex. I have no doubt that the leadership there, the chair, the CEO, and of course the rest of the NEXA people have got the full technical capacity and capability to respond to this. I think it's a question of us providing the kind of support that is necessary, but Mr. Tembani Bakula there and the team doing exceptional work will continue to support them. I'm confident that will go over this hurdle. And once we get, if you like, the right cadence, you'll see that NERSA will be able to respond accordingly without us preempting what their decisions are, but making sure that they've got that full technical capacity to address this. It really is in the numbers of, it's in the issue there, it's about the home bodies, but from a technical point of view, I have no doubt that we have some of the most competent people at NERSA who have the requisite capacity to be able to respond to an evolving electricity ecosystem. Like I said, we'll give them the necessary support. They appreciate the kind of agency, the kind of reforms have been introduced, so NERSA plays a critical role there as a regulator, and they have a full appreciation of this. We had our own strat session, the regulators, both from the nuclear side and the energy regulator were part of the conversation, just for them to have a full appreciation of what internally some of the stakeholders are thinking. And when we left the strat session, we were all at one that we need to be supporting each other, and reconfirmed our confidence in NERSA to respond to this changing electricity complex. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister, and to all the colleagues for the responses and the clarity. We will now take the last round of questions. If there are any follow-ups or further clarity-seeking questions. I see Antoinette's hand is up first, and then we'll take Katleo after that. And then Itumeleng, if you've got questions online, we'll come to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Minister, you had the numbers up there for the tariff that you're paying for PV and for wind. But as you said, there are limitations to those technologies, so surely you'll have to use them together with the storage or somehow compensate for that. Is there any good comparison between the combination of those technologies with batteries and taking into account the first round of battery storage? Thank you.
Tatlawa again from the SABC. I just wanted clarity from what Lena was presenting there in terms of the failed projects. Can you give us a breakdown of these failed projects? Where are they? How many are they? And the court process as well. Clarity on the court process. Are they taking you on to say that you are the one that is in the wrong here, where some of these projects have not actually seen the light of day? Also, their costs, if you're able to tell us how much they've cost you so far, these failed projects, as you continue with your work. Another one was on in 2022, there was an agreement that was signed into, I think it was between Eskom and the independent power producers. If I'm not mistaken, there were 3 companies that got into a 20-year deal with Eskom. Can you please give us clarity in terms of where that particular project is? Because at the time, it was motivated by the fact that we're at the height of load shedding. And there was greater agility to say that there should be IPPs that were brought on through a 20-year contract. We don't have load shedding anymore, as far as we're concerned. So where are those projects? That 20-year deal, does it still remain in place? Thank you.
Thanks, Katleo and Antoinette. Itumeleng, any questions?
Yes, there are questions from online. The first question is from Helmut Cruz from Independent Media. What is the targeted timeline to reach financial closure? Are we talking days, weeks, or months? Will future PPAs be concluded with Eskom Generations or NTCSA? When will the NTCSA issue its first stand-alone bonds? When will the next mega IPP bid window be launched? And the last question from Helmer is for Eric. What was the load factor for pumped storage in the past week? The second question is from Naila Abraham from News 24 Business. My questions are for the Minister. The first question is, will the new reform target grid capacity allocation between public and private power procurement projects? When will this reform be introduced officially before the end of financial year? Or are all these reforms still under discussions? The last question from Abraham, what is the ideal timeline to reach financial close for specific projects, and how will this new reform help the bankability of this project? And the other question is from Weldon from Reuters. In the reform process currently being undertaken, will the IPP office consider taking bids to allow for projects outside SA to be eligible? In other words, can projects in the SADC countries also be allowed to supply future IPP bids? If not, why? And the last question is from Terence Creamer, Engineering News. Could the IPPO please offer an update on inaugural gas-to-power bid window? Thank you.
Thank you, Itumeleng. Are those all the questions for this last round? Okay, we will now take responses. I think there's one question for Mr. Eric Shunmakam, and then we will take the bulk of the responses from Lina. I think there's also something that Mr. Skiabros can touch on after Lina, and then the Minister will be wrapping up on all the questions. Thanks.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Helmo, specifically for the pump storage, I'll email you the response for the last week. But I think we did respond in terms of the OCGT from April to October 17th. The load factor has been 5.76. I can tell you with the good. We know we've had poor performance in September, which we've recovered, but in the last week. Definitely much more improved performance, so we were able to use the use the PV to help in terms of building the dam resources, and then we use that off peak. But I'll give you that through email. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So a few questions I can respond to. Firstly, with regard to the future PPAs, the counterparty will be NTCSA, not Eskom. In fact, we signed 2 battery energy storage agreements this past week as NTCSA. Regarding when NTCSA might be going to the market for purposes of loans, that we cannot determine at this point. The current configuration is that Eskom has got, or NTCSA has an intercompany loan with Eskom and back-to-back with the lenders, and this is something that we will be working through. But as we stand now, we're really not in a desperate need to get additional funding. So this is something that we will work through and we can discuss in due course. I think the next arrangements possibly for you, Lina. Maybe just the last one, the question around a 20-year agreement between Eskom and IPPs. I think we need more detail unless Ms. Lina has recollection of what that could be. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll answer firstly around the failed projects. So in risk mitigation, which we launched in 2020, there were 5 projects that did not achieve commercial close. In terms of the actual sort of cost for the IPP office, we haven't disaggregated that cost. It is the cost of the bid window. However, as an incentive to ensure that bidders ultimately did achieve commercial close and were able to implement within the timelines and the framework of the RFP, we did require that bidders upfront, upon appointment as preferred bidders, provide a preferred bidder fee, which was calculated with reference to the size of the project. So for those projects, they have forfeited their preferred bidder fee. That's it for risk mitigation. For bid window 5, it was 14 projects that did not achieve commercial close. A number of those were because of the fact that they did not provide a sustainable tariff, but ultimately that was the bidder's risk. It was a competitive bidding process, and it was for bidders to propose a tariff that ensured that they were able to maintain and pay off debt and equity and be able to achieve a reasonable return. The fact that they did not achieve that was entirely within their control and risk. For those projects, similar to risk mitigation, they did forfeit the preferred bidder fee. They also we did, for the majority of them, also put a call for the preferred bidder guarantee. However, prior to the bank being able to disburse those funds under the preferred bidder guarantee, they have launched an interdict application. We will be going through the process. The first one we received was 2 weeks ago. We did also receive one towards the beginning of last week, which we are also considering from one of the bidders. From a timeline perspective, they were respectively supposed to have been heard in November. However, we believe due to the factors that have to be considered in those cases, we have requested and are seeking to agree with the parties a more reasonable timeline, and we just await the outcome of that process at this time. I can just speak generally to what the agreements that we've concluded post-2020, which is when we had load shedding. Looking at the intent of the procurement programs, we must recognize that the IRP 2019 already had an indicator of the supply-demand balance and how much additional capacity we needed to bring online to ensure that we could maintain the supply-demand balance, and hence, notwithstanding the fact that we no longer have load shedding, those contracts are required to ensure that in the long term we're able to meet our supply and demand requirements. So it was not purely agreements that were entered into for purposes of load shedding. It's based on our long-term energy needs. With regards to whether, from a SADC perspective, we would be able to look at regional projects, at this point, the determinations that we have principally speak to projects that are within South Africa. Within the regulations, the new GEM regs, there is a provision that outlines the process that would need to be followed in order for us to enter into any cross-border projects. We obviously, we at this point under IRP 2019 do not have any cross-border projects that have been contemplated which have gone through the process as articulated in the new GEM regs. Just for for everyone's information, we are required to enter into an intergovernmental agreement to the extent that we want to enter into cross-border projects. But from a policy perspective, we obviously look to the Minister for direction in that respect. I've just given an overview of the regulatory requirements. In relation to the gas program that we launched in December last year to procure 2,000 megawatts of gas-fired power projects, we are currently in the bidding process. The bid submission date was extended to March 2025. Antoinette, you asked about BES and PV, whether they complement each other and sort of the emerging trends. I think obviously from a price perspective, we have seen the price of PV come down substantially from what it is in today's terms, which is R4.66, to what we've achieved in bid window 6, where PV was bid at 56 cents. That translates to an 88% reduction in pricing. For BES, obviously, we're not at a point where we can undertake a similar comparator as we are still going through the second bidding phase. But we anticipate, and that the price will come down. Just as an illustration, if one considers where the tariffs were at bid for bid window 1 of BES, just on the adjustment based on Forex alone, we were in a high Forex cycle. That cycle has come down. We've seen a significant decrease to the prices as bid, just again because of the changes in our market, and ultimately NTCSA and the consumer gets the benefit of that. But we'll see as we get the outcomes of bid window 2 where we are in that price trajectory. Sorry, I've missed some of the other questions. Do you want to repeat those? Okay. Ideal timelines for procurement. I think it principally depends on each program. Obviously, each program and the issues that we're presented with and market issues are different, and that determines the timelines for procurement. So what we've generally sort of seen as a benchmark is, for instance, from the release of the RFP to bid submission is typically between 4 to 6 months. But for projects that require higher capex and that are much more complex, you're looking at anything between a year to a year and a half. On financial close or commercial close, to a certain extent, that is determined with reference to the timeline it takes for budget quotes to be granted. There's the NERSA licensing process as well, which determines that. We have historically, budgeted that the time between preferred bidder announcement and commercial close would take 6 months, but because of the the process to get in BQs, we've seen that can take between 18 to 24 months in some instances, and which has meant that we've had to shift then the commercial close timelines in line with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe just to elaborate on what Lena was presenting on in relation to what are the ideal timelines. What the team has done exceptionally well was to map, if you like, the value chain and be able to determine who plays what role in that particular value chain. And maybe just to give you an example, what the team has done is to say the first phase is a concept design and RFP, and they've been able to determine that the average period it takes, of course, learning from the 9 bid windows, is anything between 4 to 6 months, and of course that has to do with issues of governance approvals, the issues in relation to Eskom board approvals, like proposed risk allocations, issues around the system operator, and then you go out for an RFP, and then the third leg is a bid preparation. And in the assessment of the team is that exercise takes on anything between 3 to 4 months, and then they submit the bid, and then the bid evaluation takes anything between 2 to 3 months, and then contract finalization about 6 months. So what the team has been doing was to identify, if you like, what are the variables in each and every one of those blocks. Of course, you target the ones with the longer timelines and see how best you can truncate those. So that's an internal conversation that the team is having, so that you are able to truncate the overall process without necessarily compromising the quality first of the bids and also the evaluation exercise. So that's the work that is being done internally. So the point I'm making is that the team has been very meticulous in unpacking what are these steps and what goes in each and every of those steps, and what are those elements in those steps that are sitting with government, and how best we can optimize that. And I'm sure that we can get to what we consider to be an ideal time. Of course, on the issues of the regulatory approvals, permitting, licensing issues, we know the EIA already, significant reduction. The question we're answering is there an additional opportunity for us to even make it more efficient, that process? So there are ideas that we are entertaining internally. To Helmut's point, I think I did make the point around the mega bid window, or smaller but more frequent bid windows, when I answered Mr. Krima's question. Is something that we are entertaining. And I'm sure, like I said, I mean, I placed before you a set of issues, about 8 of them, that can help us to make the process more efficient, more agile. I'm confident that in the next 3 to 4 weeks we'll have resolved those, and then we'll come out and share with the general public and the market how we want to manage this process going forward. And in that way, I think it's going to help us to achieve that ambition of ensuring that we are accelerating the onboarding of renewables in an aggressive fashion. What form of aggression that takes, whether it's smaller, more frequent bid windows, mega bid window, a combination of other permutations is something that we'll share with you. So I really want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for having made time, and also for the colleagues. Thank you very much. We wish you the best of the week ahead. Thanks, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Minister. And colleagues, with that, we've come to the end of today's briefing. Just to indicate that we will be sharing infographics during the course of today. I know you always request for the Minister's speech. The Minister speaks to data on the presentation, so he speaks off the cuff in the main. So we hope those infographics capturing the key data and key messaging will assist. And then also to indicate that the recording of these briefings is always available on our digital platforms, as well as the GCIS website. And the Minister, diary permitting, is available for interviews to further expand on some of the content that is shared here. So colleagues, with that, as Minister indicated, a sincere thank you, and have a good afternoon further. Thanks.